Pretty excited to share the new internal tool that I've developed. So if we're going to work together in the coming months, this is one option that you're going to have available to you. You can actually use this to replace a lot of the back and forth with spreadsheets and emails. It comes from a lot of the work that I've been doing where I kind of just get frustrated doing the same things over and over again, and felt like there was a better way to service the clients that I've been working with without relying too heavily on their internal IT teams to actually develop a lot of this stuff themselves that then gets no support. So this is something that you'll be able to use. Hopefully you find it valuable. I'm really excited to actually dig into this. I'm excited to show you now and answer any questions that you might have. Please drop them in the comments below. So let's dig into it. Overall, what we've done is created this new headcount operating system. Essentially what it will do is take in your current headcount rosters, any other additional details like financial projections, headcount costs and compensation data, and actually come up with a few different views that's going to be helpful when you're making decisions on different directions you might want to take. So there is a kind of a summary dashboard, but I really want to get into the weeds on some of the key features. The main first set of features is the upload, the clean in, which allows us to take this messy data set and actually map it to something that's a little bit more. You can see I've already cleaned this data set. So we're passing all the checks here. Ultimately, what we want to do is get to this point where we have this report, which then shows you movement analysis. So it's September 30th. So I'm showing you a sample set for movement in September. We can see how many new hires, terminations, what the ending headcount was, how many known exits we have. We can see trends and analysis of hiring and attrition over the last 12 months, headcount data, and then really a forecast of how we're going to look in the months ahead, so the next 6 months. So you can see how projected headcount might change based on how many hires we think we're going to make and how many terminations we know about. So this is really just a kind of monthly summary that will probably go out to the executive team or to anyone that's interested, just to keep you on track with headcount. So that's essentially the baseline, replacing a lot of the manual consolidation work, which can take days. This should hopefully do that in a matter of minutes and actually give you a very clean view of where your headcount currently stands, but also then to feed some of these other views that we're going to have. So the first view that I'm pretty excited about is the stakeholder view. So we have 4 different views depending on who the end user is going to be. And obviously this is gated. The admin will see everything, and we're in an admin account right now. If you have people in finance team, you don't want to share individual comp data. So you'll see roll-ups. HR gets access to all of the employee data without the compensation details. And then you have a management view and an executive view as well, which I'll go into. Financial dashboard is pretty straightforward. It's just showing you overall headcount costs from the last quarter, next quarter, current quarter. What's I think most interesting for people on the FP&A teams or the CFO is where are we versus the budget? What is the average employee cost and how are we kind of trending? So you can see here by cost center, you can see variance, where the planned budget is. You can actually update this if you're on the finance team and ensure that this stays accurate. So you can see the overall costs here. And that's really helpful when you're forecasting year end and you want to know if we're actually on track. Having this data is going to give you that ability to then figure out how to drill down and partner with different teams to actually come up with an action plan to get back on track. Next is the HR view. This is kind of like what you would see in a Tableau or a Looker dashboard, or if you've got a kind of a BI tool, but there's no real integration and onboarding and ramp here. It's very opinionated. So these are all fixed areas, but what we do is have the entire employee directory. So if you click on anyone here, you're actually going to see all the details that you would expect to see in the HRIS. This is just uploaded and kind of clean, so you just get one clean view. You can obviously search. What I'm excited about here is that you can look and see, okay, who is in my sales team? You can see all the sales reps currently here. What about who's on the sales team in the New York office? You can see the names of the individuals, and you can see we have 2 active and 1 open role right now. So it's just going to allow you to get a very quick view, answer a lot of the questions that I think HR teams get over email. You can actually have a view that's going to give you that information straight away. The management view, this is when you're starting to think about what is the CEO and the CFO and the CHRO going to talk about when they're together. They're actually going to look at overall kind of headcount costs. You see here, fully loaded costs based on the data set I'm using is 19 million a year. You see how that's just distributed across location. You can actually look at the different functions. These are the roll-ups, go-to-markets like sales and marketing. You have operations, product and tech. You can see where they're all distributed, and you can kind of drill down and say, okay, well, what does my G&A function in Europe look like? You see there's 2 filled, 1 open roles in Europe. This might start to generate conversations to figure out, okay, do we need to expand there if we're going to go deeper on the EMEA plan? So it's just giving you those headline views that you might want to take forward. And then the final screen is more customized executive views. This is the thing that you probably want to send out to the board, or if you have people at a senior level who are asking a lot of questions, you can actually filter this view directly to them. So at any point in time, they can see all the things that matter most to them. And that's essentially what you would see with a lot of dashboards that a lot of your people analytics teams may build up. If you have one, if you don't, maybe this is something you've mocked up in Excel. What I'm really excited is the next three sections that I'm going to show you. One is the org chart. This is a persistent headache with any organization that is not tied to one HRIS. And even if you do have one HRIS, sometimes the nodes don't map up correctly, and so you don't really have a very clean org chart. What I've tried to do here is create something that's very, very usable. You can see here, this is all interactive, and you can kind of click through and see the whole team. But I think what's helpful here is, let's say we want to see who's in the HR team. So you can click through here, you can see how the HR team stacks up. You can kind of drill down, see where everyone is, how many direct reports they have. You can see this is actually pretty imbalanced. No managers are in the optimal band. This pretty vertical team, the span of control is too narrow. This is going to start to give you, based on what we know, the types of insights that might come if you engaged an outside consulting firm, but we're actually just going to lay this directly onto our dashboard so that as we're starting to look at different kind of potential changes, you'll be able to see very quickly where those changes might want to come from. If we look towards the bottom here, you can see the managers with the largest spans. We can see Milan has 11 directs and 15 total people within the team. So we can look at the customer success team and see how that kind of stacks up. And you can see from top to bottom, this is actually a very vertical org. There's a very imbalanced set of direct reports for Milan. So maybe we'd want to consider how do we rebalance that at some point in the future. So that's the org chart. And that's really designed to give anyone within the organization the ability to find other people. You probably want to tie email addresses to this so you can click through and figure out who's in your organization who you might want to talk to. The next one is more for executive planning and workforce strategy sessions, where you might want to think through what are the different scenarios that we're potentially going to go through in the next year, and how can we preload those scenarios so that we can review them all together and figure out what makes the most sense. This is something that can actually be dispensed to all the different leaders within the organization to come up with scenarios for their own teams. You see here, it's a similar view to what we saw in the last view on the org chart, but there's a lot more kind of cost tied into this. Obviously, this is not going to be a view that's going to go to very many people, but when you're deciding how to potentially reorg a company, you might want to think about how compensation is going to be affected. So let's say, for instance, we're going to go through a marketing reorg, and there's a new CMO coming in, or there's going to be kind of a new strategy moving forward. You see the current marketing team as it currently stands, and then the kind of cost implication for any scenarios that we're going to change. So let's look at this from the perspective of a workforce planning point of view, with the CEO, COO into head of marketing. Head of marketing has 5 direct reports, and we have someone in London, someone in San Francisco, 2 in New York, and 1 person who's remote. Let's say we actually want to centralize our marketing strategy a little bit more. Maybe we want to get a little bit more analytical in how we approach our marketing. And so what we're going to think through is how do we actually develop that kind of plan? And maybe this growth marketer in London is a resource that we want to reallocate somewhere else. And so we can kind of just click this button and we actually generate that cost saving as part of the planning process. Now, if we're going to do this, we probably want to have the other growth marketer, and maybe they're ready for a promotion. And so we'll want to change their role to director of marketing, and with that comes a increase in compensation. So we've made that update. You can see here on the change log, you can see the real-time adjustments to the changes that we're making. So this person's gone up in compensation, but we've reallocated our growth marketer in London, so we've actually still generating 150,000 in cost savings. So with this promotion, maybe we want to move the other 2 content marketers underneath this new director of marketing, and maybe we want to add a new role there. And this new role could be a marketing analyst. And then let's say we want to budget 125,000 for this role. So now you can start to see how this plan is coming together. So what we've done is we've moved the managers around, we've promoted Reese into a director of marketing role, increased the compensation, we've reallocated this growth marketer role in London, and we did a new role for a marketing analyst. Overall, we're saving about 25,000, and we're net neutral on headcount because we've removed a role and we've added the role. You can see that at the top here. This is potentially a scenario for our marketing team. We'll save that scenario, and this will be a marketing reorg scenario. We can save that and then reset to the baseline. If we ever want to go back and look at that plan, we can just load it in here and it will reload. I'll show you the cost delta that we're going to see based on that. We loaded the wrong one. So we can see the cost delta and the changes that we thought about making as part of that scenario. What I did load is the sales promotion role, which I used in testing. So in this case, all we did was promote 1 person. And we can see that if we actually go to the sales team. But I think this is really helpful for, if you think about the CRO who maybe is developing their go-to-market strategy and there's a lot of different moving pieces. This is a way to actually track different scenarios you might want to consider moving forward. And actually, if you're working with us in a consultant capacity, one of the things that we can start to think about as well is if we set to baseline these solution packs. So maybe there's a few different things that the executive team have considered, and they want to know how does that impact the overall kind of budget of the organization. So we've got some different solution packs here. This is just an example, but let's say you want to relocate the engineering team to India, so we add that solution pack. You can see the impact it's going to have on total cost, on the remote mix, cost per employee. You can actually see what this means when we go through the scenario insights. And so there's a lot of different things that you can pull together, and it allows you to plan different scenarios without having to build pretty complex Excel models, and just get a very kind of summary level view if the HRBP is sitting down with the CRO to actually decide on different potential scenarios they're going to want to go through. So that's the scenario planning studio. I'm pretty excited about that. I think it's going to make a big difference to speeding up this process and actually giving more visibility, more flexibility, and the ability to generate different scenarios. And the final step is the headcount approval process. This has been a pain point in every organization I've worked in. Generally, this is solved through an internal tool, which doesn't always work as you want it to work, and often doesn't give you a kind of high-level summary. So if you're the admin and you're actually managing the whole approval process, or you need to keep tabs on what's happening because this budget is potentially going to go well above where you need it to be, this is a simple solution that I've developed where you can actually add new headcount requests. You can see here we can view the pipeline, what's currently pending, what's approved, what was rejected. And you can actually go in and see all the notifications that are going through, and then what approval policies we have in place currently. So you see that there's one I set up for OPEX approvals, which go through the finance director, head of HR, and chief of staff. Maybe there's a simplified version for engineering and marketing. So all you do is you set up a new headcount request, and then depending on the department, the type of role, it's going to go into a different approval process. You can actually generate a new approval policy. But once it's set up, it's actually a very streamlined process and way to actually manage headcount costs so that you find you don't go over budget. And so I just start to think about the different scenarios. When you then start to action one and say, okay, this scenario is now going to become my baseline plan, you actually start to raise the recs and then start to feed that into the recruiting plan and actually get to a place where you can be confident that the headcount plan that you've put in place is actually going to be executed and you're going to hit budget by the end of the fiscal year. Obviously, there's a lot more that we can do with this, where you think about if you're still enough part of the business and you want to maintain an active roster of everyone that's within that part of the business, this baseline data setup is going to give you a lot of flexibility to do that, but also to export whatever you need. If you need to share something with an external consultant or accounting or a legal team, but just gives you a centralized way to manage that process when things are a little chaotic and hectic. Hope you like that walkthrough. Pretty excited to hear any questions. And obviously, if we work together in the coming months, this is something that you may want to use in order to smooth some of the process out. Take care. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.